The laughter that had filled our homes for years started to fade. Alongside it, one of the biggest names in vintage Hollywood seemed to have lost some of their brilliance. Fans couldn't emotionally resist Dick Van Dyke's recent statement. Dick Van Dyke is the character that dances on the rooftop in Mary Poppins, makes fun of himself on the Dick Van Dyke Show, and wins over audiences of all ages. He took a step that most people didn't anticipate at the age of 99, shortly after turning 98. But this narrative isn't about life slowing down or becoming older. However, it's something deeper. Along with a hint of a depressing tale, it solidifies a sense of love and respect for the individual. It's the sort of tale that forces you to revisit your past and wonder about what transpired behind the scenes. There is still room to comprehend the traits of the individual who is the only one aware of the smile, even after he has gained so much. Why had he come here? Why now? What does this tell us about the real lives of these renowned people? Early years and professional life. Born on December 13, 1925, in the tiny city of West Plains, Missouri, Dick Van Dyke loved his family. Hazel and Lauren, his parents, were a salesperson and a stenographer, respectively. In Danville, Illinois, he grew up with his younger brother, Jerry, who was also in their ancestry may be traced back to a Mayflower passenger, which is a very fascinating fact. He participated in both the drama club and the choir while he was in high school. He appeared in a school production alongside future performers Donald O'Connor and Bobby Short. He had originally intended to become a pastor, but in the end, acting became his favorite. Dick did not serve overseas during World War II, despite dropping out of high school to enlist in the military. Rather, he worked as a radio commentator before entertaining the soldiers at home. He graduated from high school at the end of 2004. Dick began working as a radio DJ when the war ended, and he and his colleague began doing comedy as the Merry Mutes, Eric and Van. In clubs, they lip-synced, mimed, and did silent comedy. Dick switched from radio to television. He began his career at a New Orleans local station before landing a few small parts on national programs. Through a friend he made while serving in the Army, he was able to secure a 7-year deal with CBS. Alongside Walter Cronkite, he co-anchored the CBS Morning Show. His first Broadway appearance came in 1959 in a revue called The Girls Against the Boys, which was only produced for a brief time. When Dick portrayed Albert Peterson in Bye Bye Birdie, he had great success on Broadway. Because to his exceptional performance, he was given the Tony Award. He starred in the 1963 film adaptation as well. But as usual, he wasn't pleased with the way the movie's plot had changed. Featured in the wildly successful television series The Dick Van Dyke Show from 1961 to 1966. The show won numerous Emmy Awards, and Rob Petrie, a comedy writer, was married to a young Mary Tyler Moore. The show elevated Van Dyke into national celebrity status. Dick became a movie sensation in 1964 after starring in Mary Poppins. There he was, the cheerful chimney sweep, the gregarious Bob. The film became a huge smash and earned him a Grammy for the soundtrack, despite the fact that he employed a humorously false British accent in it. Dick was reprising the numerous roles on television and in movies in the 1960s and beyond. Among other roles, he gladly turned down the part of James Bond. Regardless of his successes or failures, his charm, wit, and passion for the art were always evident. The private life of Dick Van Dyke. Dick Van Dyke's personal life is just as fascinating and vibrant as his professional life. Unusually, on February 12, 1948, he married his first wife, Marjorie Willett, on the radio program Bride and Groom Live. He was performing at the Chapman Park Hotel in Los Angeles when the wedding took place. They had 4 children, Carrie Beth, Stacy, Christian, and Barry. Following numerous highs and lows over their lengthy relationship, they made the decision to part ways and were formally divorced in 1984. Dick began dating Michelle Triola Marvin, an actress, in 1976. Before she passed away in 2009, these two lovers had been together for over 30 years. Nevertheless, he fell in love again. In 2012, he married makeup artist Arlene Silver, who was 46 years younger than him, at the age of 86. They had met years prior and hit right away when they last saw one another at the SAG Awards. Van Dyke's top priority has always been his family. His son Barry and his grandkids Shane and Carrie even appeared with him in a number of episodes of his legendary show Diagnosis Murder. The total number of grandchildren is 7. One of the most agonizing events in his life was the 1987 death of his granddaughter Jessica, who had Reyes syndrome. Dick has thus taken part in numerous efforts to increase public awareness of the risks associated with children's aspirin use. Dick was able to stay in touch with his spiritual side despite his hectic work schedule. In addition to reading the writings of renowned theologians like Martin Buber and Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he spent many years teaching Sunday school. He had a near-death encounter in 2013 when his Jaguar caught fire on a California freeway when he was 87 years old. He was rescued out of the car before it was too late by a kind individual who noticed it. The car could not be salvaged, but luckily he was unharmed. Dick was saved once more in December 2024 because of the wildfires in California. This time, though, it came from his Malibu home. Neighbors rescued him and assisted him in reaching a secure location because he was so exhausted and immobile. Fortunately, his house had not burned down and was still standing. However, he was forced to leave again a few weeks later in January 2025 due to another fire. The first wedding of Dick Van Dyke was aired on the radio. Can you imagine getting married on the radio, in front of a live audience, rather than in a church or a hall? When Dick Van Dyke wed Margie Willett, his first wife, in 1948, he did just that. Both Willett and Van Dyke were young at the time. Life was hard, and they didn't have much money. They thus agreed to get married when they were asked to do so on the popular radio program Bride and Groom. The idea was not sentimental. It was useful. By covering the cost of the honeymoon, wedding band, and even some household goods, the program helped people who were having financial difficulties. The wedding was televised from the Chapman Park Hotel on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles on February 12, 1948. Listeners from all around the country came in to hear Van Dyke and Willett's live I Do interaction. It was a unique and beautiful beginning for the young couple. To Van Dyke and Willett, being married on a radio broadcast may have sounded odd or even a little weird in hindsight, but it was a gift. Before separating in the 1980s, they were married for decades and had 4 children together: Christian, Barry, Stacy, and Carrie Beth. Van Dyke has pleasant memories of that time in his life, and often talks about how love, hope, and a little bit of luck got him through his formative years. The radio wedding wasn't a publicity gimmick. It marked the start of a real-life romance that dominated a large portion of his private life. Having an affair outside of marriage while still married, even celebrities with the best public personas have personal problems, and Dick Van Dyke's story includes a complicated private life. Despite being married to his first wife, Margie Willett, Van Dyke maintained a long-term relationship with Michelle Triola Marvin, his agent's secretary at the time, during the 1970s, when his career was still booming. His marriage eventually suffered as a result of the emotional strain caused by the decades-long romance. The persistent remorse he felt made it much more challenging. In his 2011 memoir, My Lucky Life in and Out of Show Business, Van Dyke was open and honest regarding the effects of the affair on him. Triola and Van Dyke lived together until Michelle passed away from lung cancer in 2009, despite the fact that they were never married. The majority of stories claim that despite the initial grief caused by the affair, their relationship eventually became incredibly serious. Van Dyke has acknowledged how much Michelle meant to him and has spoken respectfully and fondly about those years. In retrospect, Van Dyke recognized the affair and the remorse that followed as significant turning points in his life. He took ownership of his behavior and the suffering he brought to those he loved, as well as to himself. Fans gained a deeper, more relatable understanding of the guy behind the smile, because to this later life display of sorrow and remorse. Van Dyke showed a high level of emotional integrity by being honest about his mistakes and coming forth with the complete truth. He even described his introspection as difficult but necessary. Although the book ended on a depressing note, it also brought about growth and acceptance. His drinking battles. Even someone as bright and vivacious as Dick Van Dyke had his personal struggles, and his alcoholism was one of the most difficult. For more than 25 years, Van Dyke has been battling alcoholism in secret. He eventually acknowledged that he was unaware of the scope of the problem for a considerable amount of time. Speaking about that time in his life, he claimed to be in complete denial. It was taxing his work and family in addition to his health. Van Dyke made the brave decision to seek help at the rehabilitation facility in the beginning of the 1970s. Everything changed with that step. He got sober and stayed sober the whole time. His portrayal of an alcoholic businessman in the 1974 television film The Morning After, which he could hardly differentiate from his real life, is what made him most notable. The challenges faced by the character were similar to his own. The performance became considerably more intimate and poignant as a result. Immediately following his recovery, Van Dyke made no attempt to hide what he had experienced. Instead, he set out on a quest to utilize his tale to show how others could benefit. He was quite forthright about his alcoholism in interviews and public appearances, hoping that his candor might serve as the catalyst for others to get help. This realization marked a sea change in his life. Since then, Van Dyke has received praise for his courage, candor, and discussion of a subject that many people find difficult to acknowledge. His healing journey continues to have an impact, demonstrating that a person's popularity or level of affection are irrelevant. They are still capable of going through difficult circumstances and coming out stronger than they were before. Reprimands for getting married to a young woman. It wasn't the charming wedding that garnered media attention when Dick Van Dyke married Arlene Silver in 2012. The fact that she was 40 and he was 86 was the reason. In Hollywood, a 46-year age difference? That's enough to make people take notice. In reference to the rumors and skepticism surrounding their unique pairing, Van Dyke subsequently revealed, "Everyone said it wouldn't work." However, the pair is still together, content, and disproving the skeptics more than 10 years later. He told folks, "We get along so well." And Arlene added, "We just care about each other so much." Their relationship feels very natural, Silver even acknowledged. "The way it works is like eerie," she remarked. "People of the same age don't stick together." At the Screen Actors Guild Awards in 2007, the two initially crossed paths. Not typically outspoken in social situations, Van Dyke recalled, and Silver also had a clear memory of that particular incident. She recalled seeing Dick at the food table, wearing a bow tie and grinning broadly. "Hello, I'm Dick," he said. I asked him, "Are you and Mary Poppins not?" First. Their connection inevitably became amorous after years of friendship and support, particularly after the passing of Van Dyke's longtime companion, Michelle Triola. After work, Arlene would stop by and bring me some lunch. She was really helpful. He said, "I fell in love." They now value living a modest life in Malibu together. Van Dyke also attributes his youthful appearance to her. "It works to have a lovely young wife who is half my age to look after me." Mary Poppins' famed Cockney accent. The dancing sequences and the utilization of fanciful elements inspire wonderful memories, and people typically link Mary Poppins, 1964, with joy and a love of the music because it has been a part of their lives for a long time. However, one character has always been known for having a very poor Cockney accent, which is the single case that caused viewers to have the false idea about the film. It is difficult to forget Dick Van Dyke's disastrous portrayal of Bert, the cheerful chimney sweeper who tried to mimic a working-class London accent. Some of the accents in the film are distracting, such as Leonardo DiCaprio's patchy Rhodesian accent in Blood Diamond. Some of them, like Keanu Reeves' odd imitation of the British English dialect in Bram Stoker's Dracula, are genuinely humorous and charming examples. The second group is a good suit for Van Dyke's accent. It's not even close to being good. Despite its exuberance, it somehow contributes to the character's allure. Van Dyke acknowledges it himself. Throughout his career, he has been candid about his mispronounced accent in a number of interviews, and the extent of his embarrassment. He further ridiculed the fact that he received little assistance from his Irish accent instructor. The accent didn't detract from Mary Poppins' wonderful, family-friendly qualities, either. In a strange sense, many fans still believe it made Bert's persona more endearing. Van Dyke was given another chance in 2018 when he made a brief appearance in the movie Mary Poppins Returns. He performed the accent considerably better that time, and it pleased the spectators to see him again. Only the British could be angry, according to Van Dyke himself, but the majority of them seemed perfectly content with it. His political opinions. Van Dyke openly supported Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary in 2016 at the age of 90. He expressed his admiration for Sanders' honesty and consistency, saying that he was amazed by how Bernie has upheld his values throughout the years. Van Dyke even made headlines by attending demonstrations in support, despite his advanced age. He continued to express alarm about the nation's course in 2020, endorsing Sanders once more. He wasn't afraid to voice his misgivings about Donald Trump's leadership style during the campaign. He publicly discussed how Trump made him uneasy, even going so far as to claim that he hadn't felt this way since the Cuban Missile Crisis. His powerful remarks captivated social media and the media. He continued to be politically active after that. Van Dyke declared his support for Kamala Harris as president in 2024. In order to remind people of the importance of choosing kindness and opposing hate, he posted a voting message along with a classic civil rights movement quotation. Given his extensive history of promoting justice and civil rights, many followers appreciated his zeal and genuineness. Others, however, were let down. Thoughtful entertainers should not make their political views public. Van Dyke never expressed regret for speaking his mind, despite criticism from some people for fusing politics with his public character. Instead, he stated that his support sprang from sincere care for the country. It proved that, despite being nearly 100 years old, Van Dyke was still engaged, thoughtful, and unafraid to voice his opinions, regardless of whether others shared his views. His happy handbook on growing older Dick Van Dyke isn't afraid to share his secrets because, even in his 90s, he still has more vitality than others half his age. Following the completion of his first memoir, he made the decision to write a slightly more intimate self-help book titled Keep Moving and Other Tips and Truths About Aging. Van Dyke discusses in the book how he continues to be so energetic, content, and vibrant as he ages. His message is straightforward. Just have fun and don't act your age. He writes, I start to dance if I hear music playing in a store while I'm out shopping. I sing if I feel like it. I read books and become energized by novel concepts. I have fun. He makes it apparent that the true secret to aging well is to maintain your youthful spirit. It's not about acting younger, according to Van Dyke. Doing what you love and not caring about what other people think of someone your age will make you feel younger. He is an example of how age need not be a hindrance, whether he is singing at the top of his lungs or dancing in a grocery store aisle. It's no surprise that he inspires people. He is a living example of how happy, busy, and exciting life can be at any age. The state of Dick Van Dyke's health. Dick Van Dyke, an actor well known for his upbeat outlook and boundless energy, has had his share of health problems, though he has kept them to himself most of the time. Van Dyke later made a very candid admission about his long history of chain smoking. He stated in an interview in 2013 that he had finally given up smoking and had been quitting for over 10 years by spitting out Nicorette gum. Although it was difficult, he approached it with a certain amount of humor and tenacity, which was typical of much of his life. Van Dyke revealed a strange health issue that had afflicted him for nearly 7 years later that year. In April of 2013, he described it as a strange thudding sound in his head that only came when he leaned back. The problem had gotten so bad that it was interfering with his sleep and even forcing him to postpone public engagements. Despite a number of medical tests, doctors were unable to determine the root cause of the problem. Then, in May 2013, Van Dyke posted a possible fix on Twitter. He revealed that the strange symptoms might have been caused by his titanium tooth implants. Despite not being a diagnosis, it gave him and his doctors a fresh direction to follow. Van Dyke kept a positive outlook throughout it all. He continued to show up for interviews, public engagements, and performances with a big smile on his face despite dealing with frustrating health issues. His tale serves as a warning that even the most upbeat, energetic people can experience silent difficulties. However, in keeping with Van Dyke's manner, he tackled it with fortitude, openness, and a hint of comedy. For what reason did Dick Van Dyke enter a nursing home? Dick Van Dyke is still winning people over at the age of 99. But even legends need to rest from time to time. Due to a health concern, the legendary actor was unable to attend the June 28th Vandy Camp event, and fans showered him with love and support without hesitation. Fans get the chance to commemorate Dick's extraordinary life at the beautiful Vandy Camp. The celebration, held at Malibu High School in California's Arlene and Dick Van Dyke Theater, includes musical numbers, fascinating anecdotes about his life, and even visits from notable people. Fans of all ages have the chance to get together and relive the magic he brought into their lives. However, the plans changed this time. It was Dick's wife, Arlene Silver, who had to tell everyone about the event. She told the throng, "I have to let you know that Dick is not coming to celebrate with us today, according to people. I apologize. There are good days and bad days when you're 99 and a half. And regrettably, he is not feeling well today and is upset about being unable to attend." Although it was disappointing that he didn't show up, Arlene reminded everyone that the event wasn't just about seeing Dick. Honoring what he has been to them throughout the years was the goal. "It's in homage to your youth, all of our childhoods, and the music that permeates our lives," she remarked. A major contributor to that is Dick Van Dyke. These Vandy Camp gatherings are a great way to meet people and get everyone together. It's clear that this wasn't some terrible reversal, but rather one of those days when relaxation was the remedy for whatever ails him, even though Arlene didn't say exactly what disease he was dealing with. And there is still so much more to look forward to. Dick Van Dyke says he will be making more appearances shortly and has been working on a new memoir that will be published in November. But for now, they're just sending him their well wishes and telling him that, whether he's taking it easy at home or performing on stage, he will always be in their hearts. Dick Van Dyke's life has been nothing short of a wonderful trip, full of music, joy, perseverance, and an unwavering heart. He had a talent for making people feel better from the first time he took the stage, and he continues to do so today, almost a century later. However, Van Dyke's uniqueness goes beyond his skill. It's his generosity, his delight, and the way he remained true to himself through all of life's highs and lows. He is a man who has practically danced through generations and has managed to stay timeless. Van Dyke has served as a constant reminder of the power of simple joy, whether it is through his warm smile, silly charm, or the sparkle in his eyes. He has never feigned perfection. He has made mistakes, grown, learnt, and always gotten back up with a lot more grace and a bit more wisdom. He hasn't slowed down creatively or emotionally as of yet. Whether it's writing, coaching, or just bringing that contagious enthusiasm that has always been his signature, he never stops coming up with new ways to connect with people. He is a calm light in real life as well as a movie star. The life of Dick Van Dyke is a real example of how happiness endures and that aging need not be a sign of fading. It implies shining even brighter, if anything. We appreciate you joining us on this journey through Dick Van Dyke's remarkable life. From heartwarming real-life situations to screens brimming with joy, his narrative is one that inspires people of all ages. If you like this video and would like to see more heartwarming, nostalgic, and timeless icon stories like it, remember to subscribe to the channel so you never miss an update. Give us a thumbs up and share your favorite Van Dyke moment in the comments section. Keep smiling, as Dick usually does. Till the next time.